Welcome to episode 1 of the Midnight Ledger podcast. I'm your host, Ivy Monroe. Here, we talk about the mysteries that linger, cold cases, weird historical events, and stories that leave you questioning reality. Our first story tonight haunted New York for decades. In 1979, a teenage girl was found murdered along a rural road in the town of Caledonia. No one knew her name, where she came from, or who had killed her. For over 40 years, she was known only as Caledonia Jane Doe, or Cali Doe. It was the morning of November 10, 1979. A farmer and his wife were driving down a quiet back road in Caledonia, New York. As they passed by a drainage ditch, they noticed what looked like a pile of clothes. At first, they thought it might have been trash someone had dumped, but as they slowed down and looked closer, they realized it was a young girl lying face down. She had been shot twice, once in the back of the head and once in the chest. Police were called immediately. They noted she had been killed execution style, and from the look of things, she had died only hours before being found. The girl was estimated to be between 13 and 19 years old. She was about 5 feet 3 inches, 120 pounds, with shoulder-length brown hair and hazel eyes. She wore Wrangler jeans, a man's red nylon jacket, a plaid shirt, and size 7 shoes. A brown leather belt was buckled tightly around her waist. In her ears were small, inexpensive earrings. She carried no ID, no money, nothing that could identify her. Detectives scoured the scene but found little else to go on. One of the first major clues was her teeth. She had extensive dental work, multiple fillings, and a porcelain crown on one of her molars. It was the kind of dental care that wasn't cheap, suggesting she came from a family with money. That detail gave investigators hope someone would come forward quickly, but no one did. Police canvassed the area. Nobody recognized her. They checked missing persons reports from across the country, comparing dental records to those on file. Still, nothing matched. Leads began to dry up. Witnesses in the area recalled seeing a young girl who matched her description hitchhiking along Route 5 the day before her body was found. Some said she may have been traveling with a man, possibly in his 30s, but nobody could confirm who he was or where they were going. Investigators chased dozens of theories. They wondered if she had been a runaway, a hitchhiker, or maybe a victim of sex trafficking. But every trail went cold. Over the years, police tried everything to give her a name. In the 1980s, they had a clay bust made of her face. In 2005, her body was exhumed so they could collect DNA. They even did isotope testing, which suggested she may. In 2015, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released updated facial reconstructions. They looked hauntingly lifelike, with her hazel eyes staring straight ahead, almost pleading to be recognized. But still, no one came forward. For decades, she was simply Cali Doe, a young woman lost to time. Finally, in 2021, everything changed. Using forensic genealogy, investigators were able to identify her as Tammy Jo Alexander, a 16-year-old girl from Brooksville, Florida. Tammy Jo had run away from home in 1979. Those who knew her said she had a difficult home life. Her friends at school noticed her struggles, and she sometimes stayed with them when things were bad. At some point, she left for good, hitchhiking her way north, possibly with hopes of starting a new life. The heartbreaking part? No missing person report was ever filed for Tammy Jo. Her family assumed she had run off and would come back when she was ready. They never imagined she had been murdered just days after leaving home. For 42 years, she was buried under the name Caledonia Jane Doe. Only when DNA linked her to living relatives did she finally get her identity back. But while Tammy Jo's name is known now, her murder is still unsolved. Police believe she may have been killed by someone she encountered while hitchhiking, possibly the man seen with her near the time of her death, but no one has ever been arrested. Tammy Jo Alexander's case is both heartbreaking and frustrating. She was only 16 years old, with her whole life ahead of her. Instead, she was left in a ditch in rural New York, and her family didn't even know to look for her. If you have any information about the murder of Tammy Jo Alexander, contact the Livingston County Sheriff's Office at 585-243-7100. For more than 4 decades, Tammy Jo Alexander was just a nameless girl in a cold New York ditch. And even though we finally know who she was, her killer has never been found. But sometimes, the mystery isn't about an unknown victim. Sometimes, it's about a child who vanishes in the middle of the night, without explanation. Our next case takes us to Shelby, North Carolina, where 9-year-old Asha Degree disappeared on Valentine's Day in 2000. And at the end of her story, we'll share some of the most recent discoveries investigators have released. 9-year-old Asha was a shy, cautious, and bright little girl. She loved basketball, was a straight-A student, and came from a close-knit family. Her parents, Harold and Aquila Degree, were protective. They kept a careful eye on their kids and limited outside influences. No internet, very little TV. To those who knew her, Asha wasn't the type of child who would ever just run off. But the events of February 14th, 2000 changed everything. The night before, the Degree family went to church, then came home. The kids, Asha and her older brother O'Brien, went to bed in the room they shared. The weather that night was terrible. Strong winds, heavy rain, and even a power outage swept through Shelby. Around 2:30 a.m., Harold came home from work and checked on the kids. Both were sound asleep. But sometime after, Asha quietly got out of bed, put on jeans, a long-sleeve shirt, and white sneakers, grabbed her black backpack, and slipped out of the house into the storm. By 4 a.m., multiple motorists spotted a small figure walking down Highway 18. It was Asha. One driver said she was walking alone in the pouring rain, wearing a backpack, and seemed determined, like she knew where she was going. Another motorist turned around to check on her, but when he approached, Asha bolted off the roadside and disappeared into the woods. By morning, she was gone. When her parents went to wake her for school, panic set in. They called family, neighbors, police. A massive search began. Volunteers, bloodhounds, and helicopters combed the area. For days, hundreds of people scoured fields, woods, and ditches, but there was no sign of Asha. Then came the first chilling clue. Searchers found a few of her belongings inside a tool shed about a mile from her home. Candy wrappers, a marker, and a pencil that were identified as hers. The discovery raised more questions. Why had she gone in there, and why did she leave again? The case went cold until 2001, when her backpack was discovered by a construction worker. It had been double-wrapped in plastic bags and buried along Highway 18, more than 20 miles from her house. Inside were her school supplies, her basketball uniform, and 2 odd items that didn't belong to her family. A New Kids on the Block t-shirt and a Dr. Seuss book called McElligot's Pool. The book had been checked out from Asha's school library, but no one knows how she came into possession of the t-shirt. Investigators struggled to piece it together. Why would a 9-year-old girl, terrified of storms and scared of the dark, walk out of her house in the middle of the night in the pouring rain on Valentine's Day? Over the years, theories piled up. Some believed she had been lured out by someone she trusted. Others thought she may have planned a secret adventure after reading a book about children running away, only to meet foul play. Her parents never believed she left willingly. They held on to the belief someone manipulated her into leaving the house. In 2015, the FBI joined the investigation. They released new evidence suggesting Asha had been seen getting into a green, early 1970s Lincoln Continental or Ford Thunderbird. They also re-interviewed witnesses and offered a $45,000 reward for information. Then, in 2020, on the 20th anniversary of her disappearance, investigators announced they had found and tested items of interest. While details were not fully released, officials confirmed they were pursuing new leads based on forensic testing. It was the first significant development in years. To this day, the case of Asha Degree remains unsolved, but her family has never given up. Every Valentine's Day, they hold a walk in her honor, retracing the steps she took that night down Highway 18. Her mother, Iquilla, says she believes someone in their community knows what happened, and she refuses to stop searching until her daughter is found. If you have any information about the disappearance of Asha Degree, please call the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office at 704-484-4822 or the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. Asha's story is one of the most haunting in North Carolina's history. A bright little girl, gone in the middle of the night, leaving behind more questions than answers. But she wasn't the only one. Decades earlier, 3 girls went out for a day of Christmas shopping in Fort Worth, Texas, and never came home. To this day, they're known as the Fort Worth Trio. It was December 23, 1974, 2 days before Christmas, in Fort Worth, Texas. The malls were packed with holiday shoppers, kids out of school, and families rushing to finish last-minute errands. That morning, 3 girls set out for what should have been a simple holiday outing. 17-year-old Rachel Trelica, 14-year-old Renee Wilson, and 9-year-old Julie Mosley. They planned to do some Christmas shopping at the Seminary South Shopping Center, a big indoor mall in town. Rachel, the oldest, was the driver. At just 17, she was already married to a young man named Tommy. She came across as responsible, the kind of girl parents trusted to look after younger kids. Renee, her best friend, had just turned 14 the day before. She was bubbly, chatty, and excited to spend some of her birthday money on gifts. Julie was the youngest, at 9. She didn't really want to go shopping that day, but begged her mom at the last minute because she didn't want to be left behind. The 3 girls left around noon in Rachel's 1972 Oldsmobile. Before heading to the mall, they stopped by Renee's grandmother's house to pick up some money she had saved. Then they drove off towards Seminary South. Rachel, the oldest, was the driver. At just 17, she was already married to a young man named Tommy. She came across as responsible, the kind of girl parents trusted to look after younger kids. Renee, her best friend, had just turned 14 the day before. She was bubbly, chatty, and excited to spend some of her birthday money on gifts. Julie was the youngest, at 9. She didn't really want to go shopping that day, but begged her mom at the last minute because she didn't want to be left behind. The 3 girls left around noon in Rachel's 1972 Oldsmobile. Before heading to the mall, they stopped by Renee's grandmother's house to pick up some money she had saved. Then they drove off towards Seminary South. By early evening, their families were worried. The girls were supposed to be home long before dark. Around 6 p.m., relatives went to the mall to look for them. That's when they found Rachel's Oldsmobile parked on the upper level of the garage. Inside were Christmas presents they had purchased, still in their shopping bags. Even the girls' purses were there, but the girls themselves were gone. Police were called, but at first the case wasn't treated as urgent. Authorities suggested maybe the girls had decided to run off, possibly to Houston, since teenagers sometimes left home on a whim in the 1970s. but their families insisted that didn't make sense. Rachel had a husband. Renee had just celebrated her birthday, and Julie was only 9. None of them had taken clothes or money. The purses in the car proved they hadn't planned to disappear. The very next day, the case took a bizarre turn. Rachel's husband, Tommy, received a letter in the mail. It was postmarked from Fort Worth on the day the girls vanished. The envelope was addressed to him in handwriting that looked like Rachel's. Inside, the note read that the girls had decided to go to Houston for a week, but there were problems. The handwriting looked rushed, almost forced. On the envelope, Rachel's name was misspelled, something she wouldn't have done. And why would they have left their purses and gifts in the car if they really had taken off? The families believed the letter was staged, possibly written by someone else to buy time or throw off the investigation. Witness reports poured in, but they conflicted. Some said they saw the girls inside the mall that afternoon browsing stores together. Others claimed they saw them leaving with men in their 20s. One report even described the girls being forced into a van outside the mall, though that was never confirmed. With no cameras at the time and no clear timeline, it was impossible to know which accounts were real. Over the years, theories piled up. Some believed the girls were abducted by a stranger or possibly someone they knew and trusted. Others suspected human trafficking. A few even thought the girls may have been lured by the promise of a party or trip. Investigators looked at a number of persons of interest, including a former mall security guard with a suspicious record. Decades later, convicted criminals in the area were questioned, but nothing stuck. The most chilling thing? Not a single confirmed trace of the 3 girls has ever been found. No bodies, no belongings, nothing. The family's grief stretched on for decades. Renee's mother never stopped searching. Julie's family said she had just wanted to be with her friends that day and never should have gone. Rachel's husband eventually remarried, but he lived for years under suspicion in the eyes of some who doubted the story of the letter. In 2018, after a new tip, investigators brought heavy equipment to a site south of Fort Worth. They dug in hopes of finding the girls' remains, believing they might have been buried there by a suspect. The search came up empty, another dead end. Nearly 50 years later, the case of the Fort Worth trio remains unsolved. 3 girls, gone in broad daylight during the Christmas season, leaving behind a car full of wrapped gifts and a letter that only deepened the mystery. If you have any information about the disappearance of Rachel Trelitza, Renee Wilson, and Julie Mosley, please contact the Fort Worth Police Department at 817-392-4222 or the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. 3 cases. 3 mysteries that refuse to fade. Tammy Jo Alexander, whose name was lost for decades. 9-year-old Asha Degree, who vanished on a stormy night. And the Fort Worth trio, 3 girls who never came home from a Christmas shopping trip. These are more than just stories. They are real lives and families still waiting for answers. If you know something, no matter how small, please speak up, because even the smallest detail could finally bring peace to the people who have waited far too long. Thank you for listening to episode 1 of The Midnight Ledger. I'm Ivy Monroe. Be sure to join me next time as we uncover more mysteries that still echo in the dark.